back channel reference, it's an off the record reference done through your own network. So if you're an employer and you're interviewing someone, they give you their standard references. But if you're considering doing a back channel reference, you'll go and look into LinkedIn and say, hey, who else do I know that knows this person? Or, hey, you worked over here. I know some people that worked over there. And you would unsolicitedly and without consent call that person and try to get a reference on the candidate. So that's the concept that we're discussing today. What I'd like to do is kind of get each of your opinion on it. And then I'll look at some polls that we ran through some HR professionals in the space. So anybody want to go first?
I think they're helpful. They might be required at times, especially for like higher level positions, but it doesn't really give somebody the opportunity to contextualize any sort of feedback. If there was just like a person that had it out for you, they could say whatever they want and you don't have an opportunity to give your input. So I think that things could get taken out of, proportion, or I don't know that they should be used across the board, I would say.
Okay. So are you for, against, or like depends on the situation?
I think if I was hiring somebody and I was close friends or friends with somebody who knew them really well, and I knew that that person wasn't going to just, make up something or rah-rah them, then I would ask for like, okay, how do you think they would do in this position, etc. If I knew the person. I don't think I would go digging into like, let me go find their past coworkers and reach out behind their back.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Dave?
I think if you think it's right and okay to back channel, you should feel it's right and okay to back channel anyone and everyone. And if it's a matter of I don't have a network with that person, but you think it's really valuable, then you should go try to find someone, because either the data is really valuable and there's not a moral line to cross, or not, right? The data could be really valuable and there's a moral line to cross, or there's a moral line to cross and the data doesn't matter. But you got to pick which one you are and stick with, in my opinion, and stick with it. Otherwise, you're just saying, well, if this person's really important, I will cross this line to find some more data. And I mean, I just don't think that way. You got to go, you got to pick one or the other.
You're inferring there's a morality issue here.
Yeah.
So Dave, thumbs up, thumbs down, depends on context.
No, I'm a thumbs down on back channeling as you defined it.
I understand the motivation behind it, which is to have this desire for validated, objective information about someone. I think the methods for how to gather that are problematic, right? It's they're unscalable. The fact that the candidate doesn't consent to it is problematic. And also there's the practical matter of if you just reach out to one or two people and they happen to have great things to say or terrible things to say, then you over-index those one or two data points, right? So I think the how is problematic. But the desire to say, I want to have an unbiased look at this candidate outside of their resume, outside of the interviews, outside of the references they provide, I think that's justifiable.
What about if somebody, like, what's the difference in the outcome of back channeling one person and somebody coming from a personal recommendation? So you have an open position. Does anybody know anybody who might fit this? Somebody, one of your friends says, yeah, I have this person. He's great. I worked with him before. Says all these glowing things. And then you have another candidate that doesn't have that personal recommendation. Should you back channel? Is that now, unfair to the first person? And how is that different from a back channel reference? If the person says something good.
Yeah, I think the goal here is all of it. It's to establish trust, right? So if you have an internal colleague who referred someone and vouches for that person, then implicitly there's some level of trust. So I think companies don't feel the desire or need to back channel as much. Whereas for a purely external candidate, there isn't that trust. And thusly, there is that desire to potentially back channel to create that trust.
Oh, man. I mean, we can push on the quality of the referral, right? Like, I know this person, but how much weight do I now give his or her referral simply because I know them? And I'd be interested to know what the data says about referred employees, kind of what the outcomes are there. I have no idea. My assumption is that they're generally better because they come in with a connection and whatever else. But if we're talking about the quality of the data, I don't know, man. If the data is so valuable that you're willing to do it without consent behind a candidate's back then it's got to be valuable in all cases.
Yeah, the problem is not just with how, kind of the accuracy of the data, right? It's the things you talked about, like the ethical concerns. So, to Sean's question earlier, like thumbs up, thumbs down, I think on the desire to have validated, objective information about someone, I'm definitely a thumbs up on that. On the how do we go about gathering it, and is back channeling the way it's done today the right way to gather it, I'm a thumbs down on that.
Francis?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I sense a strong hesitancy from everyone in using this practice, and I don't get it. I think there's some cloud of legality or something found its way into the ether that doesn't exist. When you're trying to hire a lawyer or pick a dentist or a doctor or something like that, I mean, these are individuals. Yes, they're businesses, but they're individuals. If they give you references or people to talk to, like other patients, you generally would throw those in the garbage and find ones that have used this lawyer's services before. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. You're just trying to gather objective facts and data. I agree that the way backchanneling done right now is probably ineffective because, as Jessica pointed out, you get limited data points. You get maybe one or two, and again, you have no context around those individuals. But this duty of consent or something like that, I don't think it's real. I think it's perceived more than a reality. I don't think you can be sued for backchanneling. I don't think you're breaking any law if you know an industry really well and know other people who work at the company who this person used to work at. There's nothing to stop you from calling your friends at that company and say, hey, I see that you used to work with so-and-so. What'd you think? I don't think there's anything morally or ethically wrong with that. And so I think there's this perception that doesn't necessarily match up with reality. Would it be better to tell the candidate, hey, we're going to do anything and everything we can to get objective information about your prior work performance? Sure, that's better, but it's not, really part of practice. And again, I don't see anything wrong with if I'm interviewing a candidate and either I know people or maybe I used to work at the place that they used to work. I would have no problem with calling people that I know to say, hey, what was this person like? But again, if you're doing it yourself and you've got 4 people in a department and they're interviewing candidates and those 4 people coordinate on like, okay, I'm going to call the references, I'm going to do this and do that. I think they all get in the room at the end of the process and say, oh, who do you like best? And they pick one. I mean, you didn't get the job. Sorry. Somebody else got the job. I don't think the candidate is owed anything more than that.
I have actively backchanneled and have actively been asked to backchannel in my career, and I've never once thought twice about it. Now, having now been part of this team in this discussion and now being more immersed in hiring and staffing, I understand the challenge that you're not doing it with the candidate's consent. But back then, I didn't feel bad about it at all. I just figured that's smart. And so for all the people that I backchanneled to, I was very grateful I did. And for all the people that talked to me, they were very grateful that they did. Either way, and I'll pose this to the group, is the thought process is backchannel if you have the candidate's consent. I talked to someone earlier this month where they said, we backchannel everybody. We backchannel, like literally, we just tell them in the interview, we're going to backchannel to the best we can and we know everybody. And we just set the expectation up front. If one sets that expectation and then goes down the process, how do we feel about that?
If you tell them, I feel a lot better about it from a kind of an ethical standpoint. And the reason is because if you tell them, then there's an expectation that they know to prepare themselves. It kind of puts them on even footing so that the candidate now has a chance to prepare and maybe pre-answer things that might come up in the back channel. That's an issue. What this at the heart of it for me is, why do we feel like we have to back channel? I mean, if we're so awesome at interviewing and we have so much data and we can do all of this stuff to get so much information in 6 rounds of interviews, and yet we still think that the word of one person who we know, who happens to know this person, who may have worked with them in some kind of capacity, is so valuable that we're willing to, in my opinion, cross the ethical line if we don't disclose it up front, then how screwed up is our interviewing? I mean, really, that's putting so much eggs into that basket of one person.
Do you have a moral compunction about using some of these tools that look through candidates' social media profiles and posts before hiring them? I'm pretty sure you don't get consent to use those. Isn't that just public information? Aren't your interactions that you've had with people on the job in the past part of your record?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You could
I think so. I think so. Social media is in my opinion different because you are going out and saying I am putting this out into the public. When you walk into your team meeting, you're not saying whatever I say and do here, I assume will be available to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
That's
But
fair.
I get where you're going, that yes, it is observable. And I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't be able to share things that we've observed firsthand about people we've worked with. I get that. I think it's the way in which it's done. And if the candidate knows, and I come back to put them on equal footing. If I know I'm getting back channeled, I'm going to go think, I'll probably go look at everyone that I know who knows that interviewer.
So now you know who you're on guard, right? That they may
Mhm.
talk to some people. So now the candidate's coming up with, well, don't talk to this one or that one because then I don't even need to do the back channel. Why even bother? You already told me the bad news, and you shouldn't have that many of those.
That's true.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're not going to tell them the good news. You're not going to be like, oh, you're going to talk to everybody and they're just going to sing my praises. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know necessarily.
Well, you might, but Francis, what might happen, it's a really interesting point you make, that if you say I'm going to back channel, does it then tear away a little bit of the theater that we all go through when we're interviewing and make you say, okay, well, this is probably going to come out. I want to share some things, right? And maybe it's great things, and maybe it makes everyone super paranoid, but maybe that's a way to peel back some of the onion.
Again, so I'll bring it back to what we're trying to do here. It's the relative information that's important. Maybe people who are experienced at back channeling know, okay, out of every, candidate, if I talk to one or two people, you have to be able to make a relative measurement. Like it may not be that big a deal if you get something back from a back channel. Okay, that's pretty typical. It's not that big a deal. I wouldn't have gotten this information had I just called their references, but now I've got it. It may not be a deal killer, but again, if you're comparing it, if you have an N of one, it does have the potential to cause these problems that I think you're all voicing and worrying about. You need experience doing it across many, many candidates over many years, or you need multiple data points and multiple touch points for each back channel in order to have some relative comparison. Because if you're brand new on the job and I dropped you into the seat and you're doing a back channel for the very first time and you call one person and you hear something that's like not that big a deal, but compared to some other candidate that maybe I didn't hear it from, like you need more swings. You need the N to be much, much higher to make judgments. And so that's where I would say this has the potential to do damage.
Right. I'm just going to show this off. We did two polls actually. One was, do you actually do reference checks? And the data behind it is 45% of the people says it's situational, and 15% say it's fine. Oh, there's our timer. 15% say it's fine. So I'll wrap it up with this. So a total of 60% of the people out there are willing to do it, depending on the situation at least. 19% say they're uncomfortable doing it, and 21% said absolutely not. So what do you guys make of that kind of point spread? And do you want to jump to the next poll, which is the reasons why people think it's okay to do this?
Yeah, I think you throw the next one up and we'll talk about them together.
Okay, can you see that one? So this one only has 133 votes. We just started this one out. We're at a similar mix, right? Where we're just right around 60% are saying that if it's a high profile hire or red flags in an interview, then it's okay to go and do your back channel. 28% saying it's never appropriate.
Do we get any more insight on any of these comments at the bottom?
There's only one comment so far.
Okay.
So it's still early and new.
I would imagine the people who say it's never appropriate are assuming that it's unconsented.
I was going to say that I think in most scenarios, back channeling is not consented. So I think most people, when they think back channel, they assume that the candidate does not know.
Yeah. I look at this and I say, 60, almost 70% of people think it's fine. If the circumstances from the last one, which said 45% of people said under certain circumstances, it's fine. Well, these seem to be two of the circumstances. And all it says to me is, there's no moral or ethical issue. It's just, do I want to do the work? Do I have the connection? Do I want to put this candidate's opinion of the company or candidacy at risk by doing this and maybe exposing, but never like a right or wrong. Like 70% are saying it's never a right or wrong question. It's how much value can I get out of it? And does it help me outweigh some of the risk that I think is out there? So that not moral, that's a business. Those are business decisions as I'm reading it.
It's funny, you see the number next to high profile hire. I think the opposite is it's much more valuable. Think about the hardest thing about running a small business, like a small retail business. It's getting people to show up every day and not call out every day. And that's like a very simple, basic thing, but it's the thing that you want to know the most. Because if you go ahead and hire someone and then they miss work, 3 or 4 days out of 10, you got to get rid of them. And so what was the point of hiring them in the first place? And there could be all kinds of extenuating circumstances and reasons why they have like high absenteeism or whatever, but that doesn't help you in your business. So if I'm running a retail shop and the person gave me their resume and said they used to work at this shop, and this shop, I'd call all three of those shops and find out, what kind of worker they were. I can't imagine that a business owner would say, "Oh, I would never do that. I could never bring myself to do that." If you don't, you're probably not in business for very long.
Interesting in that context. I wonder if these are folks that are more, the bigger kind of white collar environments. Nana, what do you think? You agree with the high profile hire being like, yeah, that's a good exception?
I can kind of see both sides of it, right? I can see Francis's example. The opposite may be true for small businesses, especially. For larger corporations, high profile senior hires have a disproportionately larger impact on the business and the culture. So I can understand the desire to vet that person a little bit more than, an entry level hire.
So are we doing a final thumbs up, thumbs down before we move on?
Yeah. So let's do final thumbs up, thumbs down for back channel without consent.
Yeah, probably down. But yeah, this or this.